Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Fiercely Spiritual podcast. I'm your host, Sandra Ray, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Amy Wall. Amy is a journalist, a Reiki master, and an intuitive card reader, and using a unique brand of tarot mixed with healing, channeling, and oracle cards. Amy gives inspiring and empowering multi-level readings designed to help you live your dream life. So you're so welcome, Amy, and it's so lovely to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to chat today. I'm so interested in tarot, and to be honest, I don't have like a great knowledge of tarot. I use angel cards, I use oracle cards, but tarot, it's probably a little bit more of a mystery. It's not something that I'm trained in or that I've used that much. But before we get into all that good stuff, I wanted to talk about your journey to getting here, because as I mentioned, you're a journalist and you are, obviously into the healing and cards and readings, and you're intuitive. So I'd love to just chat about how you went from journalism to this, because it seems that it's very different. So maybe
Yeah, you could say that. All right.
Yeah.
So I suppose for me, this is something that has nearly always been in my life. So like as a kid, I would have been very intuitive kid. I would have always wanted to have been outside. And then my first experience with tarot kind of came when I was about 13 years old, 12, 13. And there's a lot of, I suppose, like old wives' tales about tarot. And they say that if you're meant to be a tarot reader, you'll get gifted your first deck. Personally, I don't buy into any of this. I think if you want to learn tarot, find a deck you love, go buy it yourself. But in my case, weirdly enough, I was gifted the deck when I was about 12 or 13, and it came from my mum, which was very surprising because my mum is not spiritual at all. And she arrived home from town one day with this deck, and it's like there wasn't, lightning didn't strike, but as soon as I was handed this deck, it was like this thing that I had been waiting for. It was like something I had been missing, and all of a sudden there was this recognition of, oh, there you are. I've been looking for you and I wasn't even aware of it. And since then, I suppose the cards became a huge part of my life. I started playing with them, I started giving readings with them, and it kind of all just snowballed from there. So again, as a kid, I was always into nature. I always wanted to be outside. I was fascinated with crystals, but then I think tarot kind of sealed the deal for me.
Brilliant. And that's a great story. I love the fact that your mum gave you the cards, and
Yeah.
as you said, it was a surprise for you as well. And I know that when we first met, one thing that I loved was that you were bringing into the magazine that you work for this whole side of, the alternative or the complementary therapies and treatments, which was, I just felt it was such a brave move, because it's not something, well, this was a few years back.
Sure.
So it was probably quite new to the magazine at the time. And it was probably, you were probably putting yourself out there a bit. So it was very brave for you to step forward and to do that.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much value in holistic therapies, and I feel that if more people were just aware of the benefits, it could affect their lives in such a positive way. And one thing, as a journalist, I deal in truth, and there's so many misconceptions about this kind of work. So for me, it was so important for me to show people, well, actually, no, it's not like that, and to give, I suppose, therapists a platform so they could tell their own story without maybe being previously judged by some of the misconceptions and stereotypes that are out there.
Yeah, and I think that the more we bring the information to people, the more we bring the facts and give people choices and say, well, look, here is, this treatment, here's what it's done, here's how it works. And then you have a choice to go out and to try it. And a lot of people don't, they're not even aware of what's out there. I remember when I started doing Reiki, a lot of people would be like, oh, is that like with the feet? And I was like, no, that's reflexology. And
Yeah.
it's just bringing that knowledge and that awareness to a greater audience so that they can make
Mm.
informed choices.
Mm.
So you, like, I want to go into the tarot side of it because you have
Sure.
much better knowledge than I do. So is the, like, what's the difference between, you know, oracle cards or angel cards and tarot? You know, how do they work, or what do you find is the difference? Is there a difference in energy or the way that you
Mm.
use them?
Okay, well, there are so many differing opinions about this. So all I can offer is my own, and what I believe is, I would say tarot and oracle of the three options would be the most similar to each other. So tarot tends to deal in archetypes. So in tarot, especially in the trump cards or the major arcana, we see these universal archetypes that apply to human life. So we see cards like the magician, the fool, the lovers, and on a subconscious level, these are all archetypes that we can relate to. Whereas with oracle cards, they're not as tied to these archetypes. So I would see oracle cards as being a much more intuitive tool. So I would always say to people, if you want to become an intuitive reader, nearly it's almost better to begin with oracle cards. And then you have angel cards, which are on the completely other end of the spectrum. So angel cards, as you know, they work with the angels. The energy is very, very light. It's very beautiful. But I find myself personally, the answers that I get from angel cards would be completely different to the answers that I would receive from oracle cards or tarot cards. I find that with angel cards, you get a much broader overview of situations. You get almost like inspired divine information, which is fantastic. But if you really want to go into the nitty gritty of the situation, the everyday stuff that you're dealing with, I find tarot is a great way to do that. I also find as well, in my own personal experience, a lot of people who maybe begin with angel cards, eventually they will end up exploring other types of card reading, such as like oracle cards, or maybe even there are a few who go to tarot cards too.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because when I work with angel cards, I do readings in different ways. I
Mm,
sometimes work with cards. I sometimes just tune into the person's energy and just see
yeah,
what's coming up for them. But I find when I'm working with cards, it's like, as you say, it's that like just energy of divine love. And that
yes,
always seems to be coming through. And it's always like, well, love is the answer. And you know,
yeah.
sometimes people want more in-depth detail. And of course, angel cards do give you more than just love, but I do find there's this overarching theme of this just tremendous energy of love that comes
Mm,
through when I work with them. And sometimes I go back to people and I say, look, this is what's coming up, and you know, it's like this like energy is behind you and this power, and it's so beautiful. And they're like, yeah, but tell me, am I meant to do this or am I meant to do this?
yes, yeah. And I think that's such a good distinction, because that's exactly it. People sometimes they come to me and maybe they might not be familiar with tarot. And I know that tarot gets a bad rep in the media. I'm really trying to change the view that people have of tarot cards, because often people associate tarot with that horror film they saw one time, and the old woman in the back of the shop throwing cards and the death card and things like that. So they'll originally come to me and they'll ask maybe for angel cards, which of course I'm happy to do. But then when they're getting these beautiful messages, very spiritually focused messages about their path and their purpose, when really they're like, I just want to know when I'm going to meet someone, or I just want to know, should I leave my job? Then
Yeah.
I usually then would say, okay, well, look, maybe tarot would be the best option to tell you these more kind of mundane sort of things.
Yeah, and it's
Mm.
funny because it can be like stuff that's coming up that's related to, you know, childhood or past lives, as you say. And
Yeah,
people are like, well, I'm not really too interested in that, but that's like something deep that needs healing in
sure.
order for like that domino effect to kick in, because once
Mm,
that's healed, then it healed so many other areas. And
yeah.
people don't realize it. They think the situation in front of them is what they're dealing with, when in fact it actually could have its root in something completely different.
Completely. And I try, especially in my own readings, I try to do that in that when people come to me, I try and say, look, you'll get your nitty gritty stuff, but the tarot is also going to show you the more kind of overarching themes that you really need to look at. So many people think that a tarot reading is about when you're going to meet the tall, dark, handsome stranger, but I find it's so much deeper than that. It really is like, it will show you patterns that you need to break maybe in order for you to bring in this relationship you really, really want. And it highlights these other areas.
Yeah, that's such an important point, because I think sometimes we don't want to hear that we have to do the work.
Yeah.
And when it's like, okay, well, you have to do this work to break these thought patterns or to break this energy pattern. I was like, well, no, I just want to, like, the handsome, tall, dark, handsome person to come
Yeah.
at my door. And yeah, I'm really passionate about that side of things, because I do think that doing the spiritual work is such an integral part of it.
Mm.
Yes, the cards will guide us, and yes, they will give us information as to what work we
Mm.
need to do. But ultimately, we have to then go and do the work and to follow through. And
Mm.
it's not enough just to get a card reading and to think, okay, well, now everything's sorted. Do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I would always say to people as well, I think, again, there's a misunderstanding about the capabilities of a card reading. A lot of people would come and they would think that everything I tell them is set in stone. But I like to say to people, you're the one who's in charge of your life. So the information that you receive, it's up to you what you decide to do with it. Like, I could tell you, you could come in and I could tell you, you're going to win the lottery, and then you could choose not to go out and buy a ticket. So I do try to make it clear that it's kind of a collaborative thing. You come in, you receive the information, and then if the cards are telling you that the only way you can call in, say, the career of your dreams is to maybe get serious about looking for a new job and putting in the effort and brushing up on your skills and things like that, and then you choose not to do it, then it's not going to manifest. So you got to do the work. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
And I love the fact that, like, you're so grounded, but you're an intuitive card reader. So
Yeah.
you're not just, pulling out cards, you're using like your intuitive guidance
Mm.
and that kind of sixth sense almost when you're doing the readings. And that can be like so integral to the reading, because it's like your interpretation and what's coming through to you. So how does that work?
Yeah, I find it so interesting because if you put 6 intuitive readers in a row and you ask them what one card means, you get 6 different answers completely. So for me, I find it's very much the cards act as a starting point, and then they kind of will spark the intuitive insights that will come in. So say, for example, if you came to me for a reading and you chose a card like the Star, it would have one personalized meaning for you based on the intuitive energy surrounding it. But then if the next person came in and chose the exact same thing, it could be completely different depending on the energy that's around them. So I always say to people that the cards are a small part of what actually takes place in the room. So I'm tuning into their own energy. I receive an awful lot of extra insights, I call them. So it goes way beyond a simple deck of cards. There's a lot going on. Yeah, and the cards are just one small part.
And how do you work? Are you like visual, or is it more feeling, or is it a mixture of kind of things? Like, what way does the information come through?
Yeah, it's a complete mixture of things. An awful lot of the time I would be visual. I would get I suppose, flashes of maybe people, places, things. I also would just get really strong feelings about things. And then sometimes I'll hear names or I'll hear important dates for people. So it's kind of happening on all levels. And I always have to explain to them if I look like I'm not listening to you for a second, it's purely just because there's a lot of stuff coming through. So just give
Yeah.
me a minute.
I find that as well with healing. Sometimes
Yeah.
when you're working with somebody and there's so much information coming through, that at the end of the session, I'm trying to remember everything that's come up. And like that, I would like get visual things where,
Yeah.
like, sometimes, like, I remember getting like a visual of like Homer Simpson but it's like my interpretation of what that means. It's like, oh yeah, that means this and that relates to that. And it's
Yeah, of course.
funny when you're telling people this, and it's like, you're thinking you're mad, and then they totally like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So I always make a point of, when someone comes in, I will say to them, look, I get this extra information. It's a bit weird, but you have the choice. I will give you these extra names, these dates that come up if you want, if you choose it, or I'm happy to keep it to myself, because often I find sometimes the extra information, it can it can be so spot on that maybe it might not be what that person needs to hear at that moment in time. So, like for example, if you get a name, perhaps it could be maybe someone who's recently passed for the person, and maybe they don't want to talk about that. So I try to be very considered in how I approach the extra stuff, because for me, I want people to feel empowered. I want them to feel happy when they leave a reading, because I don't believe you should be leaving a tarot reading fretting over potential outcomes that might never happen. I want you to be empowered to go out and to live the life of your dreams and live your best life. So I always would give people the choice. And people always say to me when they come in, they go, you're gonna like just not tell me anything bad. And again, that's another misconception about tarot. And I'm like, I've been reading these cards for nearly 20 years now. I have never seen anything bad. I see growth, which can be difficult, but I've never seen anything bad. And personally, I don't believe that you can predict horrible things like deaths, illness. I don't believe you can predict those with tarot cards. So
Yeah, and I also think that there are so many timelines, like the timeline that we're on isn't, predetermined. There are so many options, and I was talking on a recent podcast about how you can change timelines, and I must go into that in more detail, because I do think that yes, the cards will give you the most likely
yeah,
option, but there are definitely other options. And
completely.
if we continue doing the same things, being the same person, acting the same way, then it's likely that that will play out. But if we change our behavior, our patterns, and do things differently, then there's so many other likely, scenarios that can play out as well.
Yeah,
So
completely.
I love the fact that you were saying you want to empower people and for them to leave feeling good and feeling empowered, because I do think there is that kind of misconception of, oh, you go to a tarot reader, as you said, and come out with, some horrible news of something horrible that's going to happen. And I know I have been for readings when, in the past, was just curious about it, and having a perfectly, lovely reading and not experiencing that. And I think it's probably the case with most readers. They don't try to scaremonger. They're just, open to whatever is coming up. So I do think that's an important thing to note, and to let people know that you're empowering them. And as you said, there may be some things that people maybe don't want to hear, but I always think that the stuff that comes up, even if it's something that in the moment they may shy away from, maybe they'll have a few hours or a day or a week to think about it. And as it kind of sits and grounds into their consciousness, they'll realize that it has come up for a reason, and that reason has been to benefit them. So you are known as Empress and Star on Instagram, and I just wanted to go into how that came about and the significance of Empress and Star in that card, because I don't know much about the cards and their meaning. So if you can explain that meaning to us.
Sure. The Empress and the Star are two cards that come from the major arcana, which are the trump cards in the deck. And when I was thinking about what I wanted to call myself, I wanted to choose cards that would represent the kind of energy I aspire to in my readings. So for me, the Empress is such a beautiful card. It's all about, I suppose, learning how to accept yourself and to love yourself fully, seeing yourself as being already whole, and understanding that in truth you already are whole, and none of us are broken. We're all exactly how we're supposed to be. And it's about having such self-acceptance and self-compassion that you are then able to create the kind of life of your dreams. And the star is very much about choosing to see the brightness and the goodness in everything. So I want to help people to first of all accept themselves, love themselves, be compassionate with themselves, and to really to not hold themselves back, to not feel fear when it comes to chasing those like deep held dreams that they have, because I believe everyone should be living the life of their dreams. You should be chasing these dreams, they were given to you for a reason. And and I really just love the energy of both those cards, so I aspire to kind of bring that into my practice.
Yeah, I'm so with you on that. And that is something I'm so passionate about as well. And I do find, working with students and clients, there's a lot of time where people have given up on their dreams, or they don't think it's possible for them, or for whatever reason, they've just limited themselves, whether through, thoughts, beliefs, life, stuff that's happened. And I do so agree that we have been given these hopes and these dreams and all these things that we aspire to because they are there for the taking, because they are there for us. And when we decide to go for it, to go for our dreams, yes, it's not always easy, but it's always so fulfilling. And it's like you just expand more and more into the fullness of who you are. And that's what your soul wants. Your soul wants to experience everything. And it doesn't want to play safe, and it doesn't want to stay in its comfort zone. It wants to expand into the fullness of who you are. So I love that that's where you're at, and that's what you're empowering people to do. So you obviously have been doing this for a while. You have been reading cards and have been working with clients. Has there ever been, people that you can't read, or that, stuff just doesn't come up for them, or people who are harder to read, or how does that work?
I find it's happened maybe once. I find that a lot of the people who would seek me out, they're open because this is something they want to explore. And obviously, if you come in with an open energy, it's much easier to get the messages and to interpret what they mean for you. The odd time I will get someone who will come in and maybe it might not be, they might not be ready yet for such a thing. I think I've said no to one person once, and that was purely just because when the energy is closed, then there's no point, because you can pull cards but they won't make any sense. So it's always best to kind of come in with an open mind, and just be open-minded, and you'll more likely to get a better reading.
Yeah, and it's the same with, healing, with energy healing. I find that sometimes, especially if it's the first time somebody's coming for a healing, they're a little bit apprehensive. They're like, what's going on? What's going to happen? And I always explain what we're going to do. But it may take like 10 minutes for them to start opening up. Like the start, they may be a bit like kind of closed, and then they'll start to relax into it. And I always laugh because at the start of a healing session, I always ask people, what do you need healing for? Is there anything in particular that you want me to focus on? And some people will come and be like, no, just to, relax and release stress. Yeah. And then at the end, I'll explain, well, this was coming up and, I felt this. And they're like, oh, that's so true. And I didn't want to say it at the start. And, so I do find people kind of open up as it goes on. But yeah, I wanted to talk about as well how you balance like working in a busy magazine and doing the readings and being a healer and having a lot of different things going on. How do you balance that in your life?
Well, tarot has always just been very much part of my life. So like my own personal practice, it kind of just slots in around the work that I do. So like it's really integrated into my life. Like in the mornings, I would pull a card for myself to set myself up for the day. In work, in my day job, I actually write a tarot page every week. So I pull cards during work for readers of the magazine, which I love. And then like it just, I find it they're so intertwined, I can't separate the two. And I think they both blend and they both complement each other. Like, I think my tarot, my healing, it helps me as a journalist. And there's skills I've learned through doing my tarot and my healing that have certainly helped me when it comes to like interviewing people and things like that. It certainly helped my communication skills. It helped me to hold space for people when they're maybe sharing difficult things and I'm interviewing them, and vice versa. I know my journalism has helped my tarot and my healing, so I can't really separate the two. They just blend, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I love it, like, so.
That's brilliant. And I love what you say about how it's helped your, interviewing and communication skills and just that intuitive side of things, just bringing that into it. Because I think a lot of time people think, and I know certainly it was the case for me when I was working in a corporate role, it was like I didn't talk about the healing side of things, and I didn't bring that into it because I just felt there wasn't really a place for it. And I love that you're doing that you're, drawing tarot cards and writing, tarot readings, and that you've been able to incorporate that and just bring what you love doing. And of course, journalism and writing, that's so creative. And a lot of the time, you can kind of think, oh, well, the two are separate, but the way you've managed to merge it and to use both so beautifully together is brilliant. And that you're able to use your skills and talents in work as well as outside of work. That's just so lovely. And one thing I wanted to touch on, because I noticed on your Instagram, you have that you're an INFJ. And it's funny because I recently did a personality test, the same one, and I came up with that same thing, INFJ. And I was looking up, I was so curious about it. And I was like, I remember somebody saying that there was some type, I can't remember what it was, but it was one of the more kind of not so common types. And I remember thinking, oh, I must look up where this comes in the scale of things. And when I did, it was like the top ones, I think there's about 16 different types.
Yeah.
And it was like right at the bottom. And it was like, oh, so there's only like a certain amount of people who are this way. So can you explain what it means and, just all about the...
Yeah, sure. So the Myers-Briggs personality test is a super fun thing to do if you're ever online and you want to, I suppose, dive deep and learn more about your personality, because it is uncannily accurate. So it's basically a personality profile. And you can go online, you can do the test for free, and it'll tell you where you fall in this kind of personality of the 16 types. So I fall into INFJ, like you, Sandra, and the INFJ is one of the rarest types. So I think I read somewhere it affects roughly 1 to 5% of the population, if that. And basically, it's characterized by being, I suppose, more introverted, more empathic, and really, interestingly enough, super intuitive. So yeah, it kind of, I find that when I did the test myself, like, it made so much sense to me. They say that perception is the INFJ's superpower, and I'd certainly consider myself a perceptive person. I feel like I kind of pick up on things or notice things in my environment that maybe other people wouldn't. And weirdly enough, a lot of people who are drawn to practices like healing, like angel cards, like tarot cards, any kind of intuitive art form, a lot of them are usually INFJs, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, and it's recently I did an episode, we were talking about highly sensitive people.
Yeah.
And I just found that so interesting, because I would be, in that kind of region where like I would have like those sensitivities. But yeah, as you say, that perception and being able to perceive things that's going on and just the energy. And I'd often find like everybody has that ability to, one degree or another. And everybody knows, like, if there's been like an argument or something, when you walk into a room and you can sense that tension. But yeah, I would find that even if there hasn't been an argument, even if there's just like an underlying, tension or something, that I'll pick up on it. And what I found difficult was like being able to pick up on it, but being able to detach from it as well.
Yeah.
And I found that I used to like take on all of these things and just not be able to separate from, well, that's their stuff, or I don't need to be feeling this on such a visceral level.
Mm.
And I don't know if you find that. Are you able to detach when you're perceiving all that stuff in your environment?
One of the best things I ever did was when I was studying for my Reiki. When I did my Reiki level 1, my wonderful, wonderful teacher taught us a simple protection prayer, I guess you could call it, as a way to sort of shield yourself from outside energies. And that is something I have to do every day, because otherwise, if I'm on the loose going into work, I find I pick up on other people's emotions. Whereas this kind of, I visualize myself surrounded by like blue light of protection, and it kind of helps me to kind of shut it down. And with regards to I suppose getting it's one thing to get loads of lovely extra information when you're reading for a client, but it's very difficult when you're like doing your shopping, doing your groceries, and you start to pick up extra information. So I've kind of, through using sort of energy protection methods, I am at a point now where I can turn it on or turn it off. And I totally advise anyone who is hypersensitive to learn how to do that, just because it will keep you sane.
And I do a huge amount of protection. I also find at the end of every day, I always cut negative ties.
Yeah.
And that really helps. But what I found was I was getting to a point where, the bubble of kind of light around me, it was like it wasn't enough. And luckily, a friend of mine who's a healer, I was talking to her and she was saying about working with, you can use a like 8-pointed star. And it's funny, shortly after I was talking to her about this, it also came up when I went to a seminar with Lars Mull, and he was saying the exact same thing. And what you do is you call on the archangels and you ask Archangel Michael to stand to your right, Archangel Gabriel to your left, Archangel Raphael behind you, Uriel in front of you, the Holy Spirit above and below you, and Jesus Christ within your heart. And I just find that so beautiful, because I find even if I do that every morning, I do it before healings, I do it, all the time. And I just have all of these angels surrounding me. And I think it's so beautiful. And it's just like that extra layer of protection. But on the other hand, I'm kind of the opinion that, yes, we need to protect our energy. But there's a side of me that thinks that you don't need to protect yourself, because it's kind of like that paradox. The universe is so full of paradoxes. And in metaphysics, it talks about, the all and how we live in the all. And the all is, God or love. And if we're living in love, and if there's nothing but love, then everything else is an illusion. So you're protecting yourself from this illusion. But if you buy into the illusion, then you need to do protection.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like weighing up. It's like, okay, am I buying into it? Am I believing that there's other energy? And of course, on some level, there is that belief. So like, okay, so I'll do the protection. But on another hand, we just live in pure love. But again, it's like a balancing act. And there's always that paradox. So if anybody listening is interested in using tarot cards, if they've never used them, or maybe they've just kind of tried briefly, how can they learn to work with them? How can they begin to start using them in their life?
Well, the first thing I would say is don't buy into the old wives' tales. Like I said before, if you want to learn tarot cards, don't sit at home waiting for someone to show up on your doorstep and gift you a deck. Go out, actively go out and get yourself a deck of tarot cards. And I would say the type of deck is so important. You really need to have a deck that you resonate with. So look for a deck that has images that inspire you, something that kind of provokes an emotional reaction in you. There's a school of thought in tarot that you should start with a standard Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and that's a fantastic beginner's deck. But I would say just go out, look at the Rider-Waite, but also look at the other kinds and choose the one that kind of makes you excited. And then I would say, because I'm an intuitive reader, I would say the best thing you can ever do is to throw away the instruction book that you get. And I know a lot of people, some people, they don't believe this, but I believe if you want to read tarot from a truly intuitive standpoint, start there. Go through the deck every day, look at the cards, take note of what you feel when you see cards like the Magician, the Star. What's your gut reaction? Because I can tell you now, your gut reaction will be bang on the money, because like the intuition is the most important tool when it comes to reading tarot. So the sooner you can start to develop that, the more accurate, the more insightful your readings are going to be. So I would say take your time, do that, and then maybe after you've sat with the cards intuitively for a couple of weeks and you've come to your own conclusions, then you might like to take up a book. I'd highly recommend anything by Mary Kay Greer. She's just a legend in the field. She's fantastic. Anything by Rachel Pollack. Just the most important thing is get a feel for the cards and come to your own conclusions. Then seek out expert advice.
That's brilliant. And it's funny you say that, because I think, well, my kind of understanding was that you need to go and learn and to, study what the cards are about and to really kind of like study their meanings. But the fact that you said just throw away the book, don't do any of that, just go with your intuition, I think that's brilliant. And it's such great advice. And it's funny because that's what I do when I'm using angel cards. I would always go with my first gut impression, and that is always so accurate. And maybe after I've kind of like gone with all of like the things that have come up for me, I might look at what's written in the book, compare and see. And sometimes I will read the description and think, well, no, that's not what's coming up at the moment. But yeah, it's like just going with that first impression and just trusting that, because I think trust is a big part of it. When you think that, oh, I'm not intuitive, or I'm not this, or I'm not that, and you have to really start trusting those feelings, and they can be really subtle at times. So it's like practicing and just getting a feel for how you receive information, because as you said, you get it in visual, or you might hear a name or different things. But some people have, that claircognizance, where it's just like that knowingness, or, there's like clairaudience or clairsentience, the feeling. So yeah, just getting to know how you interpret and how you get the information. So if somebody wanted to work with you, if they want to go for a reading, if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to work with you?
Well, I would say at the moment I'm currently in the process of building a website. It's not ready yet, but the best way to get in touch with me would be through my Instagram page. That's where I hang out. That's where I do like daily calls for people, sometimes do some free readings on there. So you can find me on Instagram. My handle is at Empress and Star, all lowercase.
Brilliant. And so do you do remote readings, or is it in person, or a bit of both?
A bit of both, yeah.
Okay.
So.
Where are you based if somebody wants to come to see you in person?
I'm based in Dublin.
In Dublin, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there anything else that we need to know about tarot, or anything else you'd like to add before we finish up?
Just that tarot is such a fantastic tool. Like I can't even imagine where I would be if tarot hadn't come into my life when I was a teenager. Tarot has helped me grow so much as a person. It's helped me to truly understand myself on a deeper level. And if it's something that you feel will pull towards, trust that intuition, trust that information, because maybe tarot could have like an incredible impact on your life too. So definitely trust the call if you get it.
Brilliant. And I wanted to mention that on Instagram, I think do you do daily readings like you do?
Yeah, I try to do daily readings. So I'll usually do a daily draw for like the collective energy. So yeah.
And I find that sometimes I'll like open your Instagram page and the reading, like it'll just call to me. There'll just be something that's like relevant. And I love that, because I don't work with tarot cards, so I have
Mm.
angel cards, but sometimes lovely just to go and see what card you have drawn, or what's come up that day. So I encourage people, if you want to follow Amy, go to Empress and Star on Instagram. I'll put a link to it below the show notes, and you can find her there and connect with her there. So thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. I've enjoyed this so much, and I have opened up. I might actually go out and get some tarot cards now.
Good.
So thanks very much, Amy. It's been lovely to chat with
Oh,
you.
thanks, Sandra. Lovely to talk to you too.